Hi, my name's Sheehan, and today I'd like to talk about the Celestial Toymaker, the 1966 Doctor Who story from season 3. I'd like to go through this story exploring its structure and the themes that crop up in it. Now, like much of season 3, most of this is missing. Episode 4 survives, the last episode. But you get a very strong sense of the story, of course, from the surviving audio. Thank you, whoever recorded that, as well as production stills. And I've managed to watch this through a reconstruction. Now, the Celestial Toymaker, I guess if you could sum it up, would be along the lines of the Doctor and his companions are playing games for their lives against this evil, bored and immortal enemy, the Celestial Toymaker. We begin in episode 1 with the Doctor who's been turned invisible, and not only invisible, intangible. He can't kind of touch things, and Stephen and Dodo are wondering what's happening. We saw this at the end of the previous story, of course. But then they arrive in this place. It looks like a glorified toy room, and they meet the Celestial Toymaker. The Celestial Toymaker, who's encountered the Doctor before, he wants the Doctor and his companions to be his playthings for all eternity. So he sets these challenges for them. The Doctor has got the whole story to solve this trilogic problem, it's called, where he has to move these shapes in a particular way to another position on the board. And Stephen and Dodo have got a series of games to play. And if they complete these games, they'll be reunited with the TARDIS. If not, they're stuck forever in this hellish world. And Stephen and Dodo have to complete their challenges before the Doctor completes his, the trilogic game. So the Doctor wants to take his time, but the companions want to hurry up. And to make things worse, the Celestial Toymaker often fast forwards the Doctor's game to put added pressure on him. In the first episode, Stephen and Dodo, in their efforts to find the TARDIS, face two clowns, Clara and Joey, and they have to complete this obstacle course blindfolded. But of course the clowns are cheating, they've got holes in their blindfolds. But eventually Stephen and Dodo come through triumphant, but they think they've reached the TARDIS, but it's just a model of the TARDIS. It's an empty box with a riddle in. And this riddle takes them to the next game. The next game, whilst the Doctor's still playing this trilogic game, Stephen and Dodo have to play these incarnations of playing cards. And they're given 7 chairs, and only one of them is safe. The others are all deadly. And they have to use these dolls to work out which are the deadly chairs, and they're playing against these playing cards. And it has to be said, these other characters that Stephen and Dodo are playing against, they want to be free as well. So they're playing for their lives as well. Once again, Stephen and Dodo manage to get through this challenge, and they come to what they think is the TARDIS again, but of course it's another model. And this time they're given another riddle, and they go through to what looks like a kitchen. And they meet this sergeant, very much dressed up like a Christmas nutcracker. And this older lady was like this scolding kitchen maid. She's called Mrs. Wig, and the soldier's called Sergeant Ruff. And Stephen and Dodo got to find this key. Eventually they find it in one of the pies. They can open the lock, and they're through to the next challenge. And this time they're in a dance hall, And on the dance floor there are these dolls who dance, but they're like a dance of death. Once you step on the floor, the music strikes up and you can't stop dancing. And they've got to get to the TARDIS, of course. But eventually Stephen and Dodo come through. In the meantime, the Doctor is being kind of hassled by the Celestial Toymaker. The Celestial Toymaker takes his voice away, then he turns him invisible except for his hand. And then finally in the 4th episode, which you can actually watch, Stephen and Dodo face this rather large schoolboy called Cyril, who is full of tricks. He's this spoilt little brat, and they've got to play this snakes and ladders kind of game. But if they fall on the floor, they're fried. And eventually Stephen and Dodo defeat him. Cyril slips over on his own trap, falls onto the ground as it is incinerated, and Stephen and Dodo get to the TARDIS finally. But the Doctor is in a dilemma because he knows that although Stephen and Dodo have passed the challenge, he still has to complete the game. He's got one move left, and he knows that if he completes the game, he'll be gone because everything will be destroyed outside the TARDIS. So one of them's going to be destroyed, whoever puts the last piece on the jigsaw. Eventually the Doctor thinks up this ingenious plan to kind of give a voice control to move the piece and then dematerialise at the same time, and thus the Doctor and his companions are saved, and this toy world which the Celestial Toymaker has created is destroyed, but of course the Celestial Toymaker lives on as he's immortal. So what are we to make of this story? Well, it's really enjoyable. I think it's the highlight of season 3. It's got this real whimsical charm about it, these toys which come to life. And of course with children's toys there's often a sinister dark edge. And with nursery rhymes as well, there's always a sinister dark edge which goes hand in hand with the innocence. And that comes across very well in this story, particularly through the clowns, the playing cards and Cyril. The Celestial Toymaker himself is a very vivid character, played brilliantly by Michael Gough. And the world around him, this massive doll's house that's very effective. These beds he's created for Stephen and Dodo in the doll's house. The set designs for the games, it all looks rather brilliant. And you know, even Dodo's clothes, the costume, the clothes she's wearing seems to fit in with this, and Stephen's stripy sweater. Because it's one of those stories where there's a challenge every episode, you never feel it outstays its welcome. So hopefully one day the whole story will be found. And having the riddle at the end of some of the episodes helps propel the story as well, keeps you going to the next instalment. So the Celestial Toymaker, I think, is a really strong story. It's a really interesting premise, and it begins this thread in Doctor Who, this rather childlike, some would say slightly silly, although slightly pantomime feel to Doctor Who, which you could argue leads all the way up to the Happiness Patrol in the classic series in season 25. The Celestial Toymaker doesn't come back in the series, but there is a novel, The Nightmare Fair, which I think was based on a script which never made it to the screen for the 6th Doctor. So if you find that novel anywhere, please check that out. So it's a good sequel for the Celestial Toymaker. Thanks for watching. There's just a brief slideshow about the structure and themes after this. Bye.